Your Partner in Success Radio is a free business podcast with host Denise Griffitts. It's all about great stories, conversation, and context to help you move your business and life forward with actionable tips and advice from her guest experts. To listen and subscribe, just find us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you consume your podcasts.
Welcome to Your Partner in Success Radio. I am your host, Denise Griffitts, and this podcast is ranked in the top 2% of the most popular podcasts globally. And honestly, it's all because of my incredible guests. I am just here to facilitate some really fascinating conversations. And I feel incredibly fortunate to spend time with people who are at the top of their game, and they are passionate about helping you achieve your goals in both your personal and professional life. And my guests hold nothing back. They're here to share the secrets of peak performance. And I know you're going to find their insights both inspiring and actionable. That's a big thing. They're actionable. So sit back, relax, and get ready to take your life and business to the next level. So my guest today, Christina Beauchemin, is the author of Let My Legacy Be Love, a shortcut to self-loving in which she marries her lifelong love of storytelling and her passion for the extraordinary healing power of neurolinguistics. I could say this, neurolinguistics programming. And I can kind of sort of say it. So through her own personal and professional work, she experienced the eye-opening power of NLP as a tool for better communication, not only with others, but also with herself. And you can do it with yourself. And that book is on my desk as we speak. So today the question is, did you just say what I think you said? And that doesn't necessarily mean, what the heck did you just say? I think it's all about perception. So Christina, welcome to Your Partner in Success Radio. Thank you for sending me your book. It's good to have you here.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm looking forward to the conversation. I think this will be fun.
Well, we are in a group that we do some chatting back and forth too, so we've gotten to know each other a bit.
Yeah, it's been fun. I love being part of Mitchell's group, and I really have met some very cool people there that are just trying to do good work that can impact the world to help build us all up. Yeah, that's what I like about it.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking for the audience, like, who in the heck is Mitchell? What are they talking about? It's Mitchell Levy. He was on my show, and then several people who are in that particular group have been on my show. It's just been great. So anyway, to get back to you, you are a I can't talk today. It's the day after Easter. It was a long weekend. It really was. And I don't eat candy and I don't eat chocolate, but I was around people for a solid weekend, and I'm an introvert. That's tough on me.
Yeah,
so,
it's exhausting when you're not used to it.
It is. Yeah. It is. And I had a great weekend. I loved it. But I woke up this morning going, I need a nap. This is right after I woke up. So y'all just bear with me. I apologize. But Christina is a mindset specialist, a speaker, and a workshop facilitator. You're going to be doing all the talking, I'm telling you right now, for both private and corporate groups. So tell us a bit about you before we get going.
Yeah, I'll just give you like a brief overview of who I am, where I came from, how I got on this path. So when I wrote my book, Let My Legacy Be Love, it was interesting because when I was trying to come up with a title, I decided on Let My Legacy Be Love because I kind of put it out there as putting that vibration out into the universe. It's a prayer, right? And I thought anybody that happens to come across it is putting that vibration out in the world, and anybody who's carrying a box of books would see it if they read it. They're putting that out there because I am all about impacting change, because we grow up. This is the interesting thing. Like, my book describes some of the stories of things that happened while I was growing up, and things that I had no idea were the things that were holding me back in life. Because as I grew up with 10 brothers and sisters. I had 8 brothers, 2 sisters. We grew up on a dairy farm out in the country, and I'm a nature lover. Just by nature, I came in that way. Love trees, love animals, just love anything nature. So, I was thinking that I was living this beautiful life in the country, but there were things in my life, like I struggled in relationships. I always did well in business, but I struggled in close personal relationships, and especially relationships with women, and I never understood why. So I wanted to write a book. I've been a storyteller my whole life, and I love talking with people and hearing their stories and sharing stories. I decided I wanted to write a book because I love looking for the lessons and things that are happening around us in life. And I thought, well, how about if I do something like that, where like some of the stories I had started doing, like you're learning how to ride a bike, that's teaching to look for balance, to find balance in life, or that little poem, see a penny, pick it up, all the day you'll have good luck, to turn it to see a penny, leave it there, I've got wealth enough to share. Things like this that would kind of inspire people to look at things from a different way. And as I was writing, I was sharing the stories that I was writing with a friend, and she started questioning me on some of the stories. We were totally best friends at the time. And she was questioning me on things that I was saying in the stories, and why do you think you did that? And I don't know. And she would say, I think you do. She was a psychology major in college. So she would just continually dig in there. And then there was this one question that she asked me that just sort of changed the view of everything. And I said, okay, I'll write that. I'll write that about that, but I am not going to publish it. And it was so interesting because that's when we started to dig in and to realize that the things that had been holding me back in life were very specific moments in my childhood, those little stories that were running on a loop in my head. You know how you have a story running on a loop? So I started digging into those stories and then looking at them from a completely different perspective. Like, okay, now as an adult, why did I see it that way now that I can understand things from this different place? So I originally self-published the book in 2018, but then in 2020, I was contacted by a traditional publisher who was, kind of forward thinking, saying, well, people are really going to be going inside of themselves and looking at themselves more during the period of the shutdown, during the pandemic. And he was interested in taking my book and putting it through his publishing company. So, and the nice thing about that was I was able to write a guidebook. But anyway, when I originally self-published, I love going out and speaking. I just love speaking to groups. And I was doing a ton of speaking. And people kept asking me how I was able to detach from these stories. So I was like, well, maybe it was just the understanding or just kind of seeing it from a different perspective. So what I did was I wrote out the process that I had done to figure it all out. And I was really digging into neuroscience during that same period because I was understanding I was a sickly kid, and I was understanding that a lot of the things that make us sick in life, it's dis-ease, right, are because we're holding on to an emotion, we're holding on to an energy, and it literally is making us sick. So
That's
I wanted to
understand.
What's that?
I mean, it's a mindset issue, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I'll come up with something that has been bugging me for a while. I didn't know it was bugging me. It was just sitting at the back of my head, pulling my hair, making me irritated, but I didn't know why I was irritated. And once I would take a moment and sit down with it and go, crap, because I live in the South, we can say things like that.
I love that.
And I would have to change my mindset about whatever it was that had been with me since I was a kid or maybe in my 20s. And I had just never sat down with it and dissected it and said, okay, you go now. I'm through with you.
Yeah, and that's what it takes. So as I really got into it, I came across neurolinguistics then. I had already done all the work. I had already written the book, and it was already out when I came across neurolinguistics. And then, when I found it, I got super excited because I started reading about it, and I said, wow, there's all kinds of tools that I can actually share with people around this whole idea, because getting in there and doing that personal work completely changed my life. I was able to detach from so much. And the people that I've worked with in the meantime are doing the same thing. It is absolutely possible, because people get stuck in these spaces of, oh, nothing ever works out for me. And if you keep saying that, guess what? It's not going to. You have to be able to look at these things from a completely different perspective than what you're used to looking at an event, because we do hold these emotions in our bodies, and they, like I said, they can make us sick. And when I first started to do the work, I had my first moment of huge realization. It was 2008. My second marriage had just ended, and I was absolutely devastated. It was bad enough the first one failed, but then to have a second one. And I realized, and this is what I share with people all the time, is that I was the common denominator in everything that wasn't working in my life.
Well, yeah.
I was the only one that was there for everything, right?
It's common sense, but how many
right.
of us really pay attention to common sense, which, by the way, is fairly rare?
Well, this is the interesting thing, because as I've been out doing this work, because I've worked with different groups and people and stuff, and one woman said to me, she said, so basically what you're selling is common sense. And I said, yes, because we're not taught common sense in our lives. We come into our families with patterns that have been there generation after generation. In most families, that's how it goes. Like, people aren't dissecting it, right, and saying, I don't want to do this. When I was a little kid, my dad had terrible PTSD. He was in World War II, and he just really struggled because he was in a terrible airplane crash, and he was just totally messed up physically, and he had this whole thing in his head. So he would turn to violence very, very quickly. So, as kids, we were scared of him. And then I decided when I was feeling those ways that I wasn't going to do that. No matter what happened, I was going to stay calm, that I would never hit my children, that I would lift them up at all times. I would never tell them that they weren't going to be good enough, or that they weren't pretty, or they weren't smart, or I would never do that to my kids. And so it was interesting to see, as my kids were growing, how they have their stuff, of course, because the poor kids had to go through 2 divorces with their mom. They just have different issues. But my son sent me a little meme the other day about intergenerational healing. And I said to them, I'm really sorry that I didn't figure all this stuff out before I had you guys. So you did get some of my BS. You just didn't get the beatings, the disrespect, and what the other thing was. And he goes, that's okay. Everybody needs a little bit of BS in their lives. And we laughed about it. But ultimately, what I learned through the whole process is that as kids, we're taught how to talk, but very few of us are taught how to communicate.
True.
And yeah,
that is so true. I was taught as a child to be seen, not heard.
Right.
Which for me was fine. I was an introvert, but I was the only introvert in a large family, and they drove me crazy. They were loud. They were boisterous. I was like, no talking. But we were taught, literally, once my father hit that door, we had to disappear.
Yep.
And I still do
Yes.
to some degree. You know,
Mhm.
I'm going to go now. I'm only good, and I've said this on the radio before. I guess this is where this comes from now that we're talking about it. But I mean, I'm only good around people that I don't know for about 59 3/4 minutes. I've timed it. And then after that,
Mhm.
I'm out of there.
Yeah.
That's probably a childhood thing. Thank you. I just never identified that.
Yeah. And so these are the things that, it occurred to me because in my house there were so many of us, it was hard to get a word in edgewise. And I was more quiet as a kid. People always say, you're so chill, and I suppose that that's part of it. I am a little on the chill side, but I also love to chat. So when I got to college and I had the opportunity to sit with all these girls, it was like not all, instead of being a house full of boys, right? All these girls in my dorm. This is wonderful. And I found myself chatting all the time. And somebody said, Christina, you're really not a very good listener. And I said, what? She goes, well, you talk all the time and you cut people off like you're not listening. Whoa, well, that hurt, right? And especially because it was true. So I went and took an interpersonal communications class that they had at the college because, I wanted to be a good listener. So that was one of the best classes I ever took all through college. And I continue to use those skills even now. And I do temper myself because I'll get excited because I'm obviously I get excited. I'm passionate about what I'm doing. And, I've got something to say. And I'll have to stop and say, wait a second, just be quiet. Don't be cutting anybody off. Let them speak. But we don't learn that. Like we weren't taught that in our homes when we were kids. And I kind of did a little survey, when this kind of came clear in my head, started asking people how many people actually had a communications class like in their high school. I grew up in a small school, so of course we didn't. We were very rural. Most of them did not. And this is how I've worked with businesses, right? Because they have trouble with communication in their businesses. And I say, well, this is because people come from homes where they weren't taught how to communicate, and then we're all thrown together in a company, and we're supposed to have a common mission and be moving forward commonly, but we have different ways of communicating with each other. So it's a huge issue for people. And I joke, when I'm teaching these classes too, I'll say, when you talk, you get in trouble. When you don't talk, you get in trouble. When you email, you get in trouble. When you text, you get in real trouble. Because it's just been my experience with people that's what happens, and that most of us are listening to reply rather than listening to understand. That's something else that we just don't think about. And if we take the time to try to understand the person, which sometimes goes way beyond just the words that they're saying, there's body language too. You walk into a room and you kind of get a feel for the room and get a sense of people. What people are more open to conversation, what people are more closed. The ones that are more closed, how do we pull them into the conversation? Because so many times those people who are more introverts are really deep thinkers, and what they have to say is super important. So how do we bring them into the conversation?
Yes, questions.
Yeah,
exactly. I always
exactly.
ask questions. I'll listen very intently.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere along the line, I learned how to listen. It wasn't taught to me.
Mm-hmm.
It just, maybe it's natural to me. I don't know, but I think I'm getting better and better at it. But I always want to know what it is that you're actually talking about. Like we said at the top, did I hear, how did you say it? Did you say what I
think you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to have to ask questions about this because I'm not sure I understood what the meaning behind that was. And once you start asking those questions, as long as they're not mean and nasty, just don't get combative. But then all of a sudden the conversation starts going back and forth, and you stop, you listen, they stop and listen. It's a great conversation. But you have to be aware that this is what needs to happen. And what we're talking about, you and I, is that awareness has to either be taught or it's innate, and you produce it as you go on. You better find it. That's all I've got to say. You better find that patience to listen.
Right. Because in so many cases, we just don't, especially people that are excited about what they're doing. Oh, I can't even say that. I mean, I've run into people of all types that don't listen for all kinds of different reasons, or they think they're listening. And I used to keep was on a 3x5 card over my bulletin board for years, and it said, listen to understand. Because it's easy to get in there and you want to reply, but it's like, wait a second, let's just give it some time. And we were never really taught to ask questions. I mean, think about that. Some people do come by it naturally. But in school, as a little kid, I don't know about you, but I was always afraid to ask a stupid question. The whole class would start laughing. And so asking questions was something that came later to me in life, not until I was in college and an adult, where I felt more confident in who I was, did I begin to really think about what would be a good question to ask. And sometimes, honestly, I have to walk away from a conversation and process it, and then go back and ask questions later.
Yep.
I'm not good real time with questions. I have to think about it.
Well, and that's not unusual. And I'll be chatting with somebody, here on the podcast, and I'm ready to ask a question because it's popped into my head while you're speaking, and all of a sudden you answer it for me. Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even have to ask it. So
right.
Patience helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people don't have that, when they're trying to get something done. I tell this story that was kind of funny, where at one company that I worked with for a long time, I was a corporate controller for international manufacturing company for a long time. And we were in the conference room one day, big company meeting. I don't remember what it was that was going on. And the research people were yelling at the production people, and the production people were yelling at the office people that were in there. It was like this big hoopla started going on. I'm sitting there, and they kept saying, well, did you get the memo? Did you get the memo? And the production manager said, yes, I did. And he kept saying, well, did you get it? Yes, I did. It was so, all of a sudden, I just made this really loud sound that I make. Everybody stopped. They were shocked, right? And I go, okay, we're not asking the right question. Ed, did you have time to read the memo? Mm-hmm. And he said, no. There you go.
That's important information to have.
Right.
Yes, I got the memo. Did I look at it? Kind of, maybe, sort of. Tell me what it was all about.
Exactly, because that's what he said. We had an emergency out in the back this morning, and I barely had time to get in here and get in this meeting. Well, so I pulled him aside afterwards, and I said, next time that happens, just say it. He goes, well, they would have been yelling at me about that. No, that's just your assumption, which is another thing that as humans we do all the time. When somebody else is talking, we're making all these grand assumptions without asking questions. We're assuming certain things right away. And we don't even know we're doing it most of the time. And personally, when I came across the book, The Four Agreements, it came out in the late 1990s. Are you familiar with that book?
Oh, Don Miguel Ruiz.
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with it.
This book, I have it on my desk. I've had it on my desk since I bought it in like 1997 or 98 when it came out, because it was a handbook in my office, and I've shared it with people, and I share it now as part of the work that I do, how important it is, these four agreements for communication, for getting along with other people, for understanding yourself better, right? So like the first agreement is be impeccable with your word. And that doesn't just mean be impeccable with your word with other people. It also means to talk to yourself nice and say good things about yourself. Learn to believe those good things about yourself so that you can be truly impeccable with the words that you're using by yourself to yourself. Because I believe, and because I know so many people that it's been the same, we get stuck in life because we don't believe in ourselves for one way or another. So say if you're an entrepreneur and you're starting a business, we did a big expo this weekend, and I met several people that were doing that right now, and they were all saying the same thing. I hope I can do this. How about you turn it around and say, I'm so excited because I'm having this opportunity and I'm going to kill it. So, and to say that instead, because it helps your brain look for opportunities rather than shutting the opportunities down. So with the communication, when I say communication with other people, but maybe more importantly, communication with yourself. That's where that came from the 4 agreements, be impeccable with your word. And then the second of the 4 agreements is, don't take things personally. Because how many times somebody says something to us and right away it's like, what did you mean by that? Which is, they may have, it's like, it's nothing. You might just be taking it the wrong way, or they're having a bad day. There's so many pieces in the background with human beings when we're trying to understand each other. So if you come out of the gate and say, I'm not going to take anything personally, no matter what anybody says, there you go. Let go of your insecurities, and you can start to do that by doing this work and speaking to yourself better. And then number 3, don't make assumptions. Because assumptions, like when I was growing up, I always heard assumptions was assume, it makes an ass out of you and me. I think I can say that on this show.
Oh, yeah.
And that, to me, every time I find myself, because even now, I'll find myself making an assumption, and I'll say, wow, what, you're making this grand assumption. Why would you think that? Just go ask. And then the last one is always do your best. And that doesn't mean that you have to work at your top prime level all the time. That's part of what's difficult about our culture is we believe that that's what we need to do. But a couple of months ago, I remember just having a day, and I was supposed to do a presentation to this big company, and I woke up in the morning and I didn't feel well, and I said, it was 5 o'clock, I'm always up early, and I thought I'll be fine by noon. And as the morning went on, I was like, I don't think I'm going to be fine. And I'm going to make such a terrible impression because I can't even put 2 thoughts together. I'm sick. So at the last minute, I had to call them and tell them that I wasn't going to be able to do it. And I also said I would understand if you didn't want to rebook me. And they were super good about it because I said the best I can do today is to take care of my health, take care of myself. Take the afternoon off and allow myself to be sick so I can get over it faster. Well, lay down, rest, drink water, do whatever I needed to do to be able to work my way through the illness. So that's why I loved this book so much. And I think, too, with Neurolinguistics Programming, I meditate a lot. I love to meditate. I get a lot of insight that way. And when I first started this work, I was sitting here meditating, and I say here because it was in my office, I have a little couch in here. It's like my favorite place in the house. And I was asking, how do I explain this work that I'm doing to people? And I was sitting there quietly, and all of a sudden I heard a pearl. And I was like, I don't know, the whole pearl thing. Yeah, you take something bad and you make it beautiful. Yeah, I get that, but I'm not getting it. So a little while later,
layer.
Well,
a pearl is it's layers and layers and layers, and that's how it comes to be beautiful.
Exactly, and it's even more beautiful than that because when I went out to take a walk, when I couldn't figure it out, I walked up the top of the hill, and when I got up there, I said, oh my God, it's an acronym for the steps we have to go through this work. And the A is awareness. If we're not aware that we're not listening or we're making assumptions, we're taking everything personally, if we're totally not aware of that, there's really nothing we can do. We have to get to that place where we have that moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the common denominator here. Maybe it's me. So when you get to the awareness piece, then the P is you have to be willing to take personal responsibility, because you can't just blame everything on everybody else for things that are going wrong in your life. We all are responsible for our own life and the choices that we make and the way that we're interacting with people. Then the E was to get in there and examine it. And you don't even have to go very deep when you're first starting, right? Like, why am I feeling this way? Why did I react that way? I'm hungry. Ooh, I get snippy when I'm hungry. Or, I'm tired. I had a rough day yesterday. That's maybe why I'm feeling that way right now. And then the A is you have to accept it. It's happening. It's going on, because when you accept things, you can release it. It is what it is. I can start from now and move forward. And that brings us to the L, which is limitless, because now you've opened up a new space in yourself with limitless opportunity, because you have let go of that emotion, you've let go of that thought, and you're going to move it into a new direction. So isn't that cool? So it was
It is. And I was a jeweler by trade for a long time, and I can't tell you how many strands of pearls I strung over the course of my career. I love pearls. I think they're beautiful.
Me too. And when I was a little kid, this is why it was so interesting that I got a pearl, because when I was a little kid, I was absolutely fascinated by my grandmother's pearls. She had this one really big one, and I would like to just hold it in my hand, because they're so beautiful, and all those layers, and this, as they say, it actually starts normally with a little parasite or something.
It's irritation.
It's an irritation. Yep. Yeah. And all the layers, and they get smoother and smoother and smoother. But then having it, be an acronym for the work that I was doing, was like, that's crazy. That's so cool, especially because I love pearls so much.
And see, I call those God winks. You meditate. I'm never able to do it. I have a squirrel brain. My brain just goes, oh, go write your Thanksgiving grocery list. It was Thanksgiving a week ago. I don't need to go write it. It's just, I get whiny.
That's how I used to be with it.
Oh, gee, I try. I really do. I can do a walking meditation when I'm out with my dog. I'll catch myself, just kind of taking the strides, and she's being a good girl, so I don't have to constantly pull her or yank her or say, please don't do that. We just walk, and it's very meditative for me. But my way of, just instant meditation, you got to think I'm nuts. I go to the refrigerator. I have a double-door refrigerator. I open them up. I stick as much of my body in there as I can, because the minute you open that refrigerator door, you have no idea how you got there, no clue what you want, and you're blank. So it's an instant meditation for me. I do it all the time.
I like that.
I do it deliberately. I'll get up from my chair, I'll go to the refrigerator, and I come back, and I'm like, okay, off we go again.
That is so good. I've never heard that before, and that's a really cool way of getting people to think about how do you get in the moment, because that's what you do. You walk over, maybe you're a little bored, you just need a change or whatever. Let's see what's in the refrigerator, and you open up the door, and you're completely blank when you're staring at the refrigerator.
Yep. And I never come back with anything unless I actually went there for water. But, I go there so I can just kind of clear my brain. And it works for me.
That's so good. Yeah, because I had a wicked squirrel brain. And it was in 2008 when I started learning how to meditate. And I remember the first time that I meditated for 5 minutes, I talked about it for 2 days. I was able to meditate for 5 minutes. I sat there for full 5 minutes. I couldn't even
If I
believe
get
it.
there, I'm calling you. You're going to hear this. It'll be me being all excited.
Yeah. But that's what, and that's it, because I do work with people too to help them learn how to meditate. We have one meditation we share. It's only 4 minutes, and it's just a breathing, to help people.
Those I can do.
Yeah, to help people get started.
Do.
Yeah, because generally I don't spend a long time meditating, maybe 10 minutes. Because I'm like you, I do a lot of meditative walking. Because I mentioned to you that I live out in the woods here, and we have all walking trails through the woods. And I just go out and I walk. My dog runs along with me, and I'll walk. And it's where I get all my ideas, too, because we're in that totally open, quiet space where all I hear are the birds, and the chipmunks aren't out of hibernation yet, but the chipmunks and whatever animals are around. And there's something to me, so very, very peaceful about that I get in a very meditative space. And I just kind of walk, putting one foot in front of the other, being sure not to trip on any roots. And that's how I prefer to meditate myself. So, and I totally hear you on that.
Well, when I get my God winks, that's what I call them, is in the shower.
Yes.
Because, the phone is off. You're away from your monitor. I live in my office, which is in my home. I mean, there's a futon here. If I had to, I could sleep in here. I don't because it's not healthy, but this is where I spend the bulk of my time. So when I'm in the shower, I'm not thinking about anything. And listen, Christina, I've learned I'm going to get so many downloads. They're God winks. I mean, they're coming fast and furious when I relax. And I take bathtub crayons in the shower with me, and I scribble all over my bathroom walls, the shower walls. And when I get out, I'll take a picture of it. I'll go find my phone. I'll take a picture of it, and then I scrub the walls. Because if I don't take a picture of it, those God winks are gone. I can't even remember them.
Yep. I have the same thing. Like, I keep my phone with me when I'm walking in the woods so that if I get an idea, I record it. I have a little voice recorder on my phone. I'll just record it down, because by the time I get back to the house an hour later, I don't remember. Because they come in.
And they're brilliant. They're perfect. The way they're crafted, the sentence is perfect. And listen, by the time I step out of the shower, I run across the house naked, screaming all the way to my computer. I've already forgotten it. And, thank goodness, nobody can see me in the house, but I'm going to slide my butt across those tile floors one day and break something. So I just write on the bathroom walls now.
Oh, my gosh. That is so funny. Yeah, because I was a singer-songwriter for many years. Since I've been doing all the writing, that I do for my work now, I don't do it as much anymore. But I always would call it song catching rather than songwriting, because I'd be out walking and suddenly the idea would come in and I would have chords. I'd hear like almost the whole thing in my head, and I would go home and I'd pick up my guitar and I would say, I think it was this. Oh, yeah, that was it. Oh, yeah. Oh, those words would be super cool. And I would always just go, thank you. And then I would sit down and I would work on it. You say thank you.
I say thank you all the time. And look, I'm a web developer by trade. I build websites literally in my sleep. And I love to cook. I'm a very good cook. And I have never, like you, I came from a big family, and I've never learned to cook for less than a platoon.
Yep.
So I'm always freezing things and saying to my friends, can you bring some, lock and locks and take some of this food out of here? I made a gumbo. You've got to come over. And they're coming over. But I have found that when I'm cooking, because I do it by instinct, I don't use recipes. I don't use cookbooks other than for maybe an idea.
Yeah,
but I must be meditating in there too, because some of my best ideas come when I'm cooking or in the shower or walking the dog. So I've identified where my God winks come from. But I have literally built an entire website in my head, standing over the stove. I don't need to write it down. I don't need to map it. I can see it in my head. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, well, I think that is absolutely wonderful. And I think that's awareness too, where that is coming in. And I think it happens to a lot of people. They just don't notice it because they are distracted. So when you're distracted all the time, especially even more so since we have phones and all the social media and everything, people are more distracted than they ever were before. So it is a matter of learning to shut things down and give yourself time and space to learn how to build, to get to know yourself. I think that it's harder and harder these days when there's so many ideas coming everywhere. Like there's content everywhere you look. And I was in the ad business for a long time. And I always say, oh, it sells advertising. Oh, look at that headline. Oh, that's going to sell a lot of advertising. And people don't realize that because they don't understand the brain science behind it, which is why I love knowing the brain science. But those distractions are keeping everybody engaged all the time, unless they take the time to say, I'm shutting everything down, even if it's just for 15 minutes, and I'm going to take a time for me to just listen to the quiet, or if you're in the city, just sit and listen to the cars going by or whatever it is, and just be in your own space. It's hard to do that unless you actually take the time to do it. At least that's the experience that I've had with most, with people
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I do the same thing. Listen, I will not give my cell phone number to anybody. I maybe have 8 people in the world who have my cell phone number, 7 now that my brother passed away. And people say, oh, well, just, I'll text you. No, you won't. You absolutely will not text me. And I don't carry my phone around with me. I'll have to unearth it from a cat's butt, or it may be in the couch cushions. I don't take it in the bedroom with me. I don't want it near me. When I need to think, or I need to be, dealing with whatever is swirling around in my brain, I don't want to be distracted by other people's crap. And most of that's what it is.
I totally agree with you. I feel the same way. I do keep my phone with me, but never at night. I leave it out in the other room, and I don't, I do take, like I said, when I'm going out for my walks, I take it.
Oh, yeah.
Because I meditate, but I turn it, it's all off. Everything is off so that I have that time for myself. And if somebody sometimes somebody will call me when I'm in the middle, especially exercising. I'll say, no, can't talk to you now, talk to you later. Because that time is so important to get to know ourselves. Because if we don't, it's so easy to just become somebody else. We become echoes of what other people are saying and doing rather than being our authentic selves.
That is so true. And go ahead, finish that, and then
go ahead.
I thought about the 4 agreements, because you were talking about be impeccable with your word, and how that that impacts us. And listen, and I've said this before, I'll say it again. The things that we say to ourselves are far uglier, as a rule, than we're going to hear from anybody else. Honestly, if anybody in a Walmart parking lot spoke to me the way I catch myself speaking to me, I would need bail money. But we do it to ourselves. It's horrible. Catch yourself at that and reframe it.
Exactly, which is what NLP is all about, reframing, looking at it from a different perspective. I always say that too. Sometimes the things that we say to ourselves, we would never say to a friend or a family member. So it's like, talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend. And one time I was saying that to a friend of mine who was having a really bad day. And she said, well, if I started talking to myself the way I talk to you, I was like, no, that's just talking crap. I'm talking about really. That was funny. But it is important. And I remember coming across a quote. It was right around the same time when I was having this big awakening in 2008. And it was a bumper sticker. And the funny thing is, I was with my girlfriend at the time who's very tall, very willowy, and I'm not. I'm very short. And she's very, very beautiful. And, I'm okay looking, I suppose. But I remember it was a really rainy day and my hair gets wicked frizzy. So I had frizzy hair sticking all over the place and her hair was going, whoof, whoof. I was like, ay, ay, ay. And I was looking at her and I was feeling less next to her. And all of a sudden I turn around, there's a bumper sticker in this little store. And it was like somebody put it there specifically for me to see. And at that second. And it said, comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes, it is.
And I picked that bumper sticker up and I bought it. And it hangs on my wall in here even today. Because we do it all the time. And with social media, when everybody's posting all their best moments, we joke about it all the time because I did a total detox for about 2 months. And, I had to get back on for my work stuff. So I finally got back on and I was scrolling through and I said, oh my gosh, look, this one's over in France and this one's in Italy and so-and-so is taking a trip out to California. Geez, we never do anything. And all of a sudden I just started laughing because I was kidding, I was half kidding when I said it, but I was half serious. And my husband just looked at me and he goes, comparison is the thief of joy.
Listen to yourself.
It was so funny. He's always taking the things that I talk about all the time and turning them back around on me, which is just so perfect. Yeah,
well,
that
he's
struck
listening
me.
to you.
Yeah.
And, speaking of listening, we do listen to ourselves. And one of the things that I had to train myself, well, not all that long ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, is the word don't. Is, I can't. I hate that word. I hate it. I almost never use it because it's so defeating. But I will say I won't, or I don't, or you can't make me. You're not the boss of me, but I never say I can't. Now, I don't swim. Guess why? I'll drown. But I don't ever say I can't swim.
Yeah,
because
good for you.
I don't swim.
Yeah, you just don't swim. I like that. Yeah, because can't is a terrible word. That's one of those words that I can't. I canceled it out of my vocabulary years ago because we can do anything that we set our mind to. It takes work. It's not like it's easy. Not everything's just going to fall on your lap and be easy for you. But to me, the challenges that we come across in life are what make life interesting. Just imagine if every single day everything was absolutely perfect. I think you would get bored after a really short time.
I'm already bored just thinking about it.
Just thinking
challenges
about it.
Challenges are what make us.
Yeah.
If you're not challenging yourself, if you're not being challenged by something daily, multiple times a day, if you're an entrepreneur, listen, as entrepreneurs, we fall on our fannies multiple times a day. We have cast iron stomachs.
Yes, we do.
And we'll get up and we'll, dust our butt off and go do something different. We'll try it again from another approach.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing. I remember when I first started my own business, it was back in 2001. And I had left the corporate job because I realized that my kids were growing up without me. I was gone all the time. And my older son had gone down a bad road. And I suddenly saw my younger son doing the same thing. Like he started with the same step. The foot was in the air, but I saw it going down. And I said, I don't have a choice here. I have to go figure out some other way of making a living. And I remember my boss, everybody was shocked, because it was such a good job. But I said, I can't be on an airplane all the time. My kids are growing up without me, and they're more important than anything to me. So when I started my first business, I just said, okay, well, what am I really good at? I'm really good at accounting and finance. I understand balance sheets like nobody else. I'll start a business where that's the kind of work that I'm doing. And it was amazing how it came in. Like my first account came very quickly. The second account came very quickly. So that it was almost like, God saying, you're going to be good, girlfriend. Here's some money to keep you going while you get things built. But I fell on my butt so many times. Well, actually, I kept saying, at least I'm falling on my face, because that means I'm falling forward. But, and even now, the work that I'm doing, sometimes I just get overwhelmed with all the moving pieces and have to turn that around from being overwhelmed to what will it take? What steps do I need to take? Who do I know who might be able to give me some insight or may be able to help me out? Because otherwise, as entrepreneurs, it can be very overwhelming and incredibly scary. And people fail, they think they're failing, so they quit.
And see, I don't have sense enough to be scared.
See, I like that about you.
I just don't. My mother used to say that, and she sent me a card one time, my birthday card, and, happy birthday, and something along the lines of, when my feet hit the ground, I'm having to paraphrase it. The devil says, "Oh crap, she's awake," because I am on. And I still got that card. Somewhere it's like, "Mom, I thought you loved me." She said, "I do, but you scare me." She used to say that I didn't have sense enough to be afraid of anything, and I think she was right.
See, that's good, though, because I've been the same way most of my life. When it's like, it might feel scary in a moment, like, uh-oh, what am I going to do? Oh, okay. And that's about how long it lasts in most cases, unless you hang on to it.
No, I don't hang on to it.
It's
I have
the
other
hanging
things
on
to worry about. You have to prioritize your fears. You have to say, okay, am I going to be worried about this today? Okay, you can have 5 minutes. That's it, 5 minutes. And then I start laughing at myself. It's gone, and I'm on to something else.
I always say that. I don't have time to worry about that right now, so I'm not going to.
That's exactly right. Listen, before we get too far away, I wanted to talk to you about NLP. Are we talking about tapping? What are we talking about? I'm not sure I understand it.
Yeah, Neurolinguistics Programming it's mind language. If you think about it, neuro is the brain, right? Linguistics is language. Programming is you learn how to reprogram. That's by changing your thoughts, understanding the difference between perspective and reality. Most people think that everything that's going on in their life is reality, but no, it's like mostly perspective. Water is wet unless it's ice. Everything else, it's all building off of our experiences. And because of that, it is so easy to change our thoughts, because our brains, they found out about 30 years ago, are malleable, and we can build in new neural patterns. So by beginning to tell ourselves a different story, that different story begins to play out, and the old story goes away. Like taking it back to when I was talking and people kept saying, how did you let go of that? How did you release that? I don't know how to release it. Because I looked at it from a different perspective, and I saw it from a different perspective, and I started living a different way, and my brain reprogrammed itself. So that's basically what it is, and that's what mindset is all about. It's having a different mindset, changing your mindset from the negative to the more positive. And I don't like fake positivity either. It's got to be real positive, where I know this is possible because it's possible for somebody else. I always said it's not rocket science. When the company that I worked for went international, it's not like nobody's ever done this before, because everybody's like, you're so brave, you're going out there and buying and selling funds and balancing inventories across the world. Well, it's not rocket science. It's been done before. I just go ask questions, where other people are like, oh God, no, I don't want to do that. That's scary. No, you just ask questions and you figure out how to do it, and you go ahead and do it. So you decide you want to have a better life. Like in my case, I decided that I wanted to have a relationship and relationships in my life that were flourishing and fulfilling and loving and kind. And I was able to change the way I was conducting myself to make that a reality. So you
really let the opportunities come to you.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. And NLP is great because there's so many tools, and I've taken them all and developed them into a lot of it. I like to do things to make it more fun. So because then you get the dopamine hit in your brain if it's fun. If somebody's just chatting to you saying telling you stuff, you might not remember it. But if you can make it fun, you make it really interesting, the brain gets a dopamine hit and it's easier to remember. So I've taken a lot of the tools of NLP and turned them into fun little memes, and I have little videos, like things that intrigues people's brains, and while it's teaching them at the same time. So,
and earlier when we were talking, Christina, you mentioned that you have in your book, and I'm going to paraphrase this because I think you called it a workbook, or I call it a workbook. Somebody did. It's in my notes. But you've got a roadmap to life-changing self-love. So let's talk about that a bit.
Yeah, I call it a guidebook because I don't want to think of it as work. And what it is I was challenged back in 2011, I think it was, by a coach I was working with to I love my life. And because it was like I was in a really dark time. It was like almost 3 years, and it was the end of it where it was I love my life. And so in the chapter, it's called the I Love My Life Challenge. And it is all about walking through that to understand, start looking at what it is that you want to change. So before that actual chapter, the I Love My Life Challenge, there's a chapter before that just asks some questions about the good things that happened in your life and some of the things that kind of made you feel a little squeamish or a little ugh. And then so you have an idea of what might be something you want to work on when you go into the I Love My Life Challenge. And I tell the story in the book that she had challenged me to love my life when I was in this really yucky time. And what I started to do, at first it was hard because I had to say I love my life when I didn't. But what I started to notice when I was saying I love my life 10, 15 times a day, I would suddenly start to notice what I did love about my life because I kept saying I hate my life. No,
geez.
I didn't hate my life.
You're training yourself to hate it.
Right. Exactly. And so I had to turn it back around because I always loved my life before all that happened. So that I love my life. And then you say, wow, you know what? I love coffee. It tastes so good. Or I love the way my son giggles. Or I love this, or I love that. I love the way it feels when the wind hits my face. And it started to really change me kind of back to who I was before I had gotten in that dark place. And in a very short time, I think it was only like 6 or 7 months, I went from being in the depths of the deep, dark mud to the sunlight. And I remember saying to somebody, gosh, I absolutely love my life. And I actually noted it because I thought, when is the last time I said that? And yay, go me. So having the opportunity when the traditional publisher picked that up to put that guidebook in the back of the book. And there's a lot of tools, things that I developed myself during that time before I knew about NLP, and some of the NLP stuff is in there as well to help people get into that space where they can start to recognize where they're telling themselves a big old sad repeating story and how they can change it to something more positive and put themselves on a better path.
Oh, listen, when I start to whine and whinge about things and I bore myself, I just, I'm not going to do this. But we're talking about, and I start to laugh at myself because I'm so stupid sometimes. Like, really? You're a high IQ person. Why are you whining?
Right, exactly.
Go look at your IQ test again. You're smart, right? And then I start harassing myself, and it gets really funny. But,
perfect.
In your book, it's page 277, the I Love My Life Challenge, and I love C.S. Lewis. And you started out with a quote, you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. And you can do that moment by moment.
The interesting thing is, too, I put that quote out on LinkedIn, I think it was in October, and that post got over 950,000 views. It went completely nuts. And it's been my favorite quote since I came across it in 2008 when everything started to change. It was like, God, universe, whatever, was throwing me all these little pieces of candy and saying, here you go, this is for you and this is for you, and open your eyes and open your heart, and it's all here. It's here.
Here's the path. Yeah.
Here's the path. Yep.
One thing about gratitude, and I had a guest that was probably 10 years ago. This podcast is 15 years old now.
Wow.
But I'll never forget this man. He had a life-changing, life-altering illness that was set to kill him. He was prepared to die until he wasn't. And, he did the medical intervention, or some of them that he felt he needed, not all of them. And I don't blame him for that. There's a lot of them I would say, you're not doing that to me. Ain't going to happen, hon. But he started with what he called, and I'll never forget this, extreme gratitude.
Yes.
And I took that from him and ran with it. And I started realizing that I wasn't grateful for a darn thing that I was aware of. I liked life. It was fun. I enjoyed it. But I wasn't speaking out loud to God or to the spirits or my subconscious. And when I do say these things, I say them out loud because somebody's listening, right?
Me too.
So,
I do too.
I do too. Yeah, I'm always, it's a good thing I live alone. I walked out the other day. I have cats. Everybody knows I have cats. And I walked out, and there was a little, hoorah going on in the living room. And I said, don't make me call the shop steward. And then I looked over my shoulder to see if anybody heard me. And I live alone, but that's how silly it sounded. So we all had a good laugh, and I went to the refrigerator, stuck my head in there, and calmed down.
Oh, my gosh, you are so funny. Yeah, because I do the same thing, but my husband's here, so he gets me. Were you talking to me or were you talking to them? He'll say.
I know. And they'll just look at me like, what? What do you mean, shop steward? We're the boss here. What are you talking about?
Right.
Listen, we are out of time. It has been so much fun talking with you. Before I let you go, Christina, is there anything else that you'd like to share before we have to end this fascinating conversation?
Yeah, just quickly. We just started a program. We just launched it. It's called Manifesting Miracles Together. And we talk a lot about this, and we're going to be doing weekly Zoom calls. People can go and find that on either Facebook or Instagram. We're active there. But like I said, we're just launching it, and we're super excited about it to bring it out to a broader audience. So that's my current project that I'm working on with a couple of other women. And of course, I'm out all the time on LinkedIn, and they have very active, 2 active websites, ChristinaBeauchemin.com and ManifestingMiraclesTogether.com.
Perfect. Well, listen, it's been wonderful speaking with you, and I really enjoyed it. We got to have some fun and some laughs, and I thank you for all of the terrific tips and the advice that you shared with our audience. And before we wrap up today's episode, if you enjoyed today's episode at all, and I know you did, and you found her insights helpful, please leave us a review. I can talk today. I can finish this. Leave us a review and a rating on iTunes, and because your feedback helps us improve and reach more people on their success journeys. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and share your partner in Success Radio with your friends and your colleagues. And thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one. Christina, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you so much. This was fun.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffitts at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.